Shalom. Thanks for joining me. Numbers chapter 29 is the next video here. In this video, it begins to talk about several particular, what we would call holy convocations or holidays or festivals, high holy days, whatever name that we give them even today. And there are several of them listed here in chapter 29. In verse 1, it says, in the seventh month of the first day of the month, you're to have a holy convocation and do not do any kind of ordinary work. It is a day of blowing the shofar. Shofar, shofar. Shofar is the ram's horn that you have seen and probably heard people blowing ram's horns. And so this is a festival of blowing the horns. And then there's a description of the sacrifices that you give for them. Verse 7, on the 10th day of the seventh month, you're to have a holy conversation. You are to deny yourselves. You're not to do any kind of work, but you are to present a burnt offering to Adonai, to make a fragrant aroma. One young bull, one ram, 7 male lambs, and a whole bunch of more stuff. So there's the ending of that feast of shofar, the blowing of the trumpets. And then on the 15th day of the seventh month, notice this is all, these two are in the seventh month, the 10th and the 15th day of the month. You're to have a holy convocation. You're not to do any kind of ordinary work. You're to observe a feast. Present the burnt offering, and there's a great detail about what's in the burnt offering. And then on the second day, so on the 15th day, you start an 8-day period of bringing these offerings. And here it is. On the second day, you present 12 young bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs, along with grain and drink offerings. And then on the third day, verse 20, notice it decreases. It was 12 bulls on the second day. On the third day, it's 11 bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs. On verse 23, on the fourth day, it's 10 bulls, 2 rams. On verse 26, on the fifth day, it's 9 bulls, 2 rams. Now, this is the festival of Sukkot, Sukkot, the festival of booths, the festival of tabernacles. And so on each of these days, you're to bring these offerings. It's a 7th day with concluding on the 8th day, and that's when that's been going. And Sukkot just began last week, and it ended this week. So this is October. I'm looking over my calendar here on my computer. October 9th, 2025, Sukkot just ended. And so if we were living in the temple period or in the time when they had the tabernacle, we'd have been bringing these offerings every single day. By the way, on verse 29, talks about the 6th day. On verse 32, the 7th day. Verse 35, on the 8th day. It's when you're supposed to have a festive assembly. You're not to do any kind of ordinary work, but you're to present a burnt offering, an offering made by fire, giving a fragrant aroma to Adonai. 1 bull, 1 ram, 7 male lambs in their first year without defect, with the grain and the drink offerings for the bull, the ram, and the lambs, according to their number, in keeping with the rule. Also 1 male goat as a sin offering, in addition to the regular burnt offering with its grain and drink offerings. Remember, we talked about that earlier. And you are to offer these to Adonai at your designated times, in addition to your vows and voluntary offerings, whether these are your burnt offerings, grain offerings, drink offerings, or peace offerings. Moshe told the people of Israel everything just as Adonai had ordered Moshe. The point being here, these different festivals, they require a massive amount of sacrifices. It costs you. It always costs you to worship God. And it's a heavy reminder that the relationship with God is never to be taken lightly. And so there you have it. Now, chapter 30 is pretty short, but it talks about making vows. VOWS, vows. And in verse 1, it talks about here, if a man makes a vow to Adonai or formally obligates himself by swearing an oath, he is not to break his word, but is to do everything he said he would do. That's simple and short. And it set the foundation for a lot of cultural beliefs as well. And when you give your word, you keep it. When you make a vow, especially before God, you must keep that vow. And then beginning in verse 3, it's interesting because the concept or the enforcement of a vow was different for a woman than a man. If a man makes a vow, keep it. But if a woman makes a vow, there's some caveats. This is interesting. Notice this. When a woman makes a vow to Adonai, formally obligating herself while she is a minor living in her father's house, then if her father has heard what she vowed or obligated herself to do and holds his peace, then all her vows remain binding. Every obligation she has bound herself to will stand. But if on the day her father hears it, he expresses his disapproval, then none of her vows or obligations she has bound herself to will stand, and Adonai will forgive her because her father expressed his disapproval. If having made vows or rashly committed herself to an obligation, she gets married, and her husband hears, but holds his peace with her on the day he learns of it, then her vows and obligations she has bound herself to will stand. But if her husband expresses his disapproval on the day he hears it, he will void the vow which is on her and the obligation to which she has bound herself, and Adonai will forgive her. The vow of a widow, however, or of a divorcee, including everything to which she has obligated herself, will stand against her. Verse 10, if a woman vowed in her husband's house or obligated herself with an oath, and her husband heard it but held his peace with her and did not express disapproval, then all her vows and obligations will stand. But if her husband makes them null and void on the day he hears them, then whatever she said, vows or binding obligation, will not stand. Her husband has voided them, and Adonai will forgive her. But if her husband entirely holds his peace for her day after day, then he confirms all her vows and obligations. He must let them stand, because he has held his peace with her on the day he heard them. If he makes them null and void after he has heard them, notice that, then he will bear the consequent guilt. These are the laws which Adonai ordered Moshe between a man and his wife, between a father and his daughter, if she is a minor, living in her father's house. That's interesting, don't you think, about vows? Different for women than men, because in this culture, women are subject under the authority of their father's house, later are subject under the authority of their husband. But if you live on your own, you're not under those authority. But if you make a vow, the general rule is you keep that vow.